we are so excited to celebrate our 10th anniversary of this extraordinary film festival. And we're hanging out here in the Media Lounge in downtown Nevada City, where we get to chat with extraordinary people and activists and filmmakers, including the kind folks we have with us here. We have Sally Kaplan and David Vassar. They are of Backcountry Pictures and have been creating films for many years, and are here with the film California Forever, which of course is really prevalent for us now in California, considering that there are many state parks that are on the chopping block. So welcome, Sally and Dave. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Good to have you back to the festival again. You were saying that you've done several others here, and the last one was around the Hetch Hetchy and Harrison Ford. So, yeah, David.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and it won Best Short Film, and that was it. We've been coming to the festival for a number of years, and it keeps getting bigger and better. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we now have like over 4,000 activists, filmmakers, and filmgoers that are converging here in this little town of 3,000.
That's great.
I think this year in particular, it had meaning to me to be invited to this festival with this particular film, because my memory of coming here about 3 or 4 years ago, having been to a lot of other film festivals, is that it's not about competition, it's about exchanging ideas. And the heart of the film California Forever, the birth of it, was because of a passionate idea David had to keep these significant places open. And it was even before we knew that they were risking
So you started talking about doing California Forever before you even knew these parks were going to close.
Yes.
I'm going to let him speak a little bit more to that. But the main point I was going to make is to have this film here amongst this kind of audience as the first big California screening is a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Because of the kind of festival you are.
And well, I mean, in addition to the timing, you probably are familiar with the campaign that Circles launched in our community.
Sure.
Right?
Is it with the Yuba River, or is it with one of the parks?
Well, actually, it's for South Yuba River and also Malakoff Diggins.
Yeah.
So there's 2 parks here in our community that are set to close. And we had a huge town hall meeting last month and said we need at least 5,000 signatures. And we've exceeded it to 7,000.
Wow.
That's great.
And that's
a great
just community.
story. Yeah.
And I mean, so both of you have been doing that with your work and your films. So tell me a little bit about California Forever. You mentioned that you've been thinking about this before you even knew
Started it.
what's going to happen with it.
Well, about, I guess we started actively thinking about it around 2007 or 2008. I guess Schwarzenegger was still in the governor's office, and the bottom hadn't really fallen out yet of the economy, which is what really triggered the whole closure thing. But at the time we started thinking about it, there were 2 significant issues on the table. One was a place called San Onofre State Beach, which is north of Camp Pendleton.
It's a nuclear
in Orange County.
What?
Nuclear, there's a nuke there as well.
Next to it.
Yes.
This is
Yeah,
the beach.
but that's the state park.
I used to camp there. So
Yeah. So the Orange County Toll Road Authority thought that it would be a really good idea to put a 6-lane toll road through a state park. Because why? Because the state owned the land and they could get it cheaper. So
And why else? There was too much traffic on that route. This would clear the jams.
So there was that controversy going on, and then also solar power and wind power were exploding in eastern San Diego County around Anza Borrego State Park, and there was a big argument about whether or not to get that power into San Diego, they were going to put up transmission lines across the Anza Borrego Desert State Park. So those 2 things were kind of happening simultaneously, and I realized that the way the dialogue was being portrayed in the local press was that these were reasonable conversations over reasonable alternatives. And I said to myself, if we're having a reasonable conversation about putting a 6-lane highway through a state park, there's something wrong with the conversation.
And what else is going to happen?
Right,
You
exactly.
start thinking they think that's okay.
Right. And that the general public thinks that this is okay to have as a conversation.
So now you've created California Forever. What were your biggest discoveries then around people that people do care about the parks, right?
Well, I think
that the perception is skewed a bit.
I mean, we've made films in Yosemite and Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park, so we know the national park story really well. I didn't know the California State Park story, and I didn't know, for instance, that Yosemite was California's first state park. It was actually supervised and managed by the California state government from 1864 to 1906.
Yeah.
And I think that the big discovery was that virtually every park that's ever been set aside was set aside because a group of citizens felt that it was a place that should be preserved. So now that
Yes, individuals, ordinary people.
grassroots.
Just like
People who come to this festival.
Yes.
Right. So now that we're into the park closure thing, which again came up after we started making this movie, it's perfectly appropriate that the only way that the park closures are going to be set aside is for grassroots political action.
Can I
So-
add to that?
yeah, Sally. And by the way, Sally and Dave, you're married. You're a team, a husband-wife team.
Yeah, we produce, direct, and sleep together.
Perfect. I'm glad, and you're still laughing about it.
Which for
is great.
directors and producers is not
No,
unusual.
Sally's not laughing as much.
Very funny.
All right, Sally.
Just to add to your question about there are people who do care about parks. Yes, there are. But there are a lot of people who care about parks but don't realize what a park is in the state of California.
Yeah, so what is a park?
Well, some of these parks are natural or cultural heritage facilities. They're not all beautiful landscape places. Some of them, Allensworth is where, it's a beautiful story we told in Allensworth actually, was a utopian society created by ex-slaves that we wouldn't even know that piece of history had it not become a California state park. Angel Island, the immigration station on Angel Island, is devoted to a story I had not heard of, which is the Chinese immigration story to America during the Chinese Exclusion Act. It's a story Chinese Americans know. It's a story some Bay Area people know. But if that were not a park, we would not know that story. So what hit me is, yes, there are people who care about parks, but there are people who care about their own background or their city's background or their poor children, where are they going to play or where are they going to go next. And all this feeds into parks.
Well, and also because, stories are what transform our cultures. And so you have uncovered so many of these stories in our state parks. And if we don't have those stories to continue, what is the future going to look like for California? What are the stories that will define
where
us?
do we have our collective memory? Where is that held?
Yeah.
It's held in these parks.
How many parks did you visit?
Well, we
California?
figured we tried to figure out.
We
There's
visited
200
more than we shot in.
Yeah, there's 278 parks, recreation areas, historic sites, even off-road vehicle parks. That's a big umbrella. So of the 278, we probably scouted 100 or 125. We shot in
47
and
for 61 days.
61
61
days,
of
47
shooting.
parks.
And that doesn't
3
count
years.
scouting or traveling
And you
or
had to
anything.
do a lot of research then beforehand,
Oh, yeah.
right, to go
Tremendous
in,
amount
because
of
you're only
research.
going to be there for a day.
Yeah, the script took a year.
That's
Between
incredible.
the scouting and the writing and the historical research. And, I want to go back to something you were both talking about in a moment, but there's actually 2 films. What we're screening here in Nevada City is a 75-minute sort of condensation of both films. And episode 1 covers the history of the parks. Episode 2 covers the challenges for the future.
Okay.
Both of them are going to be being presented to PBS by KQED, and they're both going to run on PBS next fall. So,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and we hope by then that there's been some resolution,
right.
about the parks. So I'm assuming you've been traveling around a little bit now with your film California Forever. What's the response you're getting from people now, knowing that all these parks are on the chopping block? As far as the everyday people getting involved and being active around this?
That's a very good question. The first question we always get asked is, did you make this film because of the parks closing? That's the first question, understandable question. And I think that the resonance the film's going to have on park closures is grander. But when we entered the making of this film, that was not really on the chopping block yet. So that's the first question we get. The second comment I get from people who are not even from California who see it, because it was in, what's the name of the Missoula festival we were in?
International Wildlife Film Festival.
We won a prize at the International Wildlife Festival in Missoula, and the audience there said, I never knew this story. What a moving story. I've been to these places since I was a kid, and I can't wait to bring my own children and hopefully my grandchildren.
Yeah.
But I never knew how moving the story was.
Well, it's so important what you're doing and the film, and the timing's just perfect because people need to hear those stories to feel moved and inspired.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, what are some, top 3 things that people can do to get involved for our parks? We talked about the petition and campaigns.
Yeah, I think that, for me, that's a big question, and there's a bunch of pieces, but there's the obvious thing that you should do. Support the California State Parks Foundation. Support Save the Redwood Leagues, both financially and with letter writing campaigns. Write your local congressman, write your local state representative. It's important to interact with the business community because a lot of these parks, there's a park in Big Sur called Andrew Malero State Park.
Yes.
It's a little piece, but if that park closes, the mom and pop who run the riding stable, they're out of business.
Gone.
That's their whole livelihood. Yeah.
So this is about all Californians uniting, and I would assume this is going to be spreading on to other states as well. And
Absolutely.
well, congratulations,
Absolutely.
and thank you so much, Dave and Sally, for the incredible work you're doing. The film is called California Forever. Backcountry Pictures is the production, and just a pleasure to have you back here at the Wild and Scenic Film Festival as we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting live here from the Media Lounge at the Wild and Scenic Film Fest. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be right back.